Keith Smith covers the NBA, SpotTrack.com. He joins us now with a look at the series 2-0. Is this one of those series that feels it's just overmatched? Boston is over Dallas, or, hey, they did what they were supposed to do. They got their 2 wins on home court.
Yeah, I think let's see what happens with the Mavs, tonight. This is the season, right? I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know there, but they're not coming back down 0-3 in a series. So I'd expect their absolute best effort. We'll see what happens with Kristaps Porzingis. Everything is pointing to he's going to try to play. There were no reporters allowed during the shoot-around period today before the game, but reporters did see him walk in and out, and everybody was kind of on gate watch saying, like, all right, it looks like he's walking okay. So, for whatever that means. So we'll see what happens in there, and we'll kind of go forward from there. But, yeah, I think we're in a spot where if Dallas doesn't win this one, it's over. So I would absolutely expect their best effort tonight.
Keith, what's been, as you watch this series closely, kind of the biggest surprise at why Boston has been able to kind of dominate the first 2 games?
I think it's that Dallas is struggling so much to score. I thought this would be a higher scoring series than what it has been so far. Instead, the Celtics have really caused the Mavericks a lot of issues scoring the ball, and they've been able to kind of get into them. And I guess I underrated a little bit just how much the Celtics switchability was going to help, because what we ultimately saw in this finals is Kyrie Irving is the primary one with this. He is kind of getting the switches that he got in previous series and all throughout the year, but instead of getting a big or a slower wing, he's getting wings and bigs that can move their feet and stay in front of him and make it hard on him. And even if he goes into his pull-up series, those guys are able to get up on him and challenge his shots. So it's been difficult for him to score, and that means Luka's having to do just about everything. But the way they've been able to shut off the corner threes from the Mavs led the league in corner threes during the regular season and the playoffs, and they've barely taken any so far in this series. Boston's defense has been so good so far through the first couple games.
Keith Smith, SpotTrack.com, NBA Finals, Game 3 tonight, 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, Boston, you're watching a team that really has weapons all over the place. But to you, what's different about this Boston team than the ones that couldn't get it done the last couple of years?
I think there's a couple things. I think one is with adding Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, they don't play any non-shooters at any point when the team is whole. Everybody who gets on the floor can shoot, dribble, and pass, and that's huge because that just makes them very, very hard to defend. And then down the stretch of close games, I think we finally tipped over a point where these guys figured out, all right, this is how we close. They've been in close games this year. When they have been, they've been able to close them out and come away with the victories more often than not. So I think that's a big part of it. They just a level of trust they all have in each other. And I think that real sacrifice, too, for this group. None of them really care who scores the points or who's getting the credit. It's just, did we win? That's all we really care about. These guys, all the way back to pre-training camp, they sat down, the top 6 players did, and said, all right, we can't all start. What are we going to do? Al Horford was the one who said, I'll do it. I'll come off the bench. But Drew Holiday volunteered. Derek White volunteered. Kristaps Porzingis volunteered. Tatum and Brown both knew they were going to start. But that set the tone of, all right, whatever it takes, that's what we need to do, and that's what they've done so far.
Yeah, Holiday is the guy that seemingly was talked about a lot, and he has been just that guy that glues everything together for this team. We'll see what happens tonight. As, of course, you can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Celtics taking on the Mavericks, and would kind of be a punch in the gut if the Celtics win another one while the Sixers sit here and languish and watch. But we all know their story. Let's get into a couple things that are happening around. I want to get your perspective on what is going on with the Lakers coaching situation. How much stock do you put in what we saw earlier this week, and where do we think this ends?
Yeah, the Danny Hurley stuff sounded like it was pretty real from everybody I've talked to. I know it's been suggested that was some kind of smoke screen or that he just used them to get what he could out of UConn, and he had no real intention. But it sounded like the real failure from the Lakers side on that was they let him leave. The first kind of tenet of salesmanship is can't let him out of the building, right? You got to seal the deal, and he left, and then that turned into the Lakers getting to a point where it was, all right, now we don't have him. He decided he wanted to stay in UConn. Now we have to pivot, whether that's going to be to J.J. Redick or James Borrego or some other candidate that we don't know about. But right now the Lakers are kind of up against it. This is twice in fairly short order that they've had a coach that they made a pretty substantial offer to say, you know what, I'm really not interested. And that's a tough spot to be if you're the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, does Dan Hurley – I know there's been some suggestion he wants to coach in the NBA, but does he scream to you as a guy that his style will make it? He's undoubtedly a great X and O tactician, all of that. But does his style scream NBA guy?
I was super interested in the idea of them building a college-style program around their star players with the idea of, hey, with the new restrictions in the collective bargaining agreement, that we have to be better about developing talent on the back end of the roster. We need to be smarter about how we put together these guys and draft and develop, and even the lesser free agents that we're building those guys up. That part struck me as very interesting. But Danny Hurley would have had to change his style. I said it when it was first being talked about. I said, he likes to jump up and down and scream and yell and bang the scorer's table and everything else. And if the NBA refs are going to look at him once or twice and say, okay, that's cute, now knock it off, or we're going to throw you out of here. Like, we don't do that here in the NBA. And then his practices are notorious for being long and loud and super intense and physical. And I think a lot of times NBA fans don't realize they practice maybe once every 2 weeks in the NBA. Those days in between games are travel days, they're rest and recovery days, they're days where guys get treatment. Full practices are really only if you have two or more days off in a row, then you'll get a pin. So that was all going to be stuff he was going to have to learn and adjust, but I would assume he'd be able to figure that out. But I'm also open to there's a world where we might find out, all right, Danny Hurley just the latest in a long line of college guys who made the jump and couldn't fit in the NBA.
Yeah, I just find the fit to be kind of – and I love Hurley. I think he's awesome. I mean, if he's my college coach, thrilled. I just don't know that the fit is in the NBA. It doesn't mean he's not a good coach, just the style more than anything. When that name came out, I kind of looked kind of side-eyed at that like, how's that going to work? Keith, obviously – the finals could be done by the end of let's see, when would Game 4 be? Friday night. If the Celtics win tonight, Friday, it could be done by the end of the week, which would turn us to the offseason, the draft on the 26th and the 27th, and then free agency shortly after that. What's the anticipation for the offseason? What are a couple of the biggest offseason stories you're getting ready for?
Yeah, I think, everything kind of starts with the draft. This is a draft that is not – there's no super high-end talent, and it's considered to be pretty flat, really kind of 1 through 8, 1 through 10. Now, that tends to mean we see movement because it's really eye of the beholder type stuff, where if a team says, we really like player X, he's available at 5, we don't think he'll be available at 6, let's try to get up to 5. So sometimes that creates movement. Beyond that, it's a free agent class that it could be interesting. We could see LeBron James available. We could see Paul George available. But for the most part, the top free agents, I just finished my positional preview. I wrote about all 217 potential free agents. And then I wrote about a whole bunch of guys in the spot where these the top 50 free agents. But of the top 9 guys, most of them are expected to go back to their current teams. But what that means is this is going to turn into the summer of the trade because we're going to see a lot of movement. There's no inevitability hanging out there. Teams aren't going to be looking at, even if the Celtics win, even if they win in a sweep, no one's going to be saying, well, we can't beat them, so what's the point? So everybody's going to be going, all right, let's get it done. Let's get some trades. When you have some good teams like Philadelphia and Orlando, Oklahoma City, maybe even Utah in that mix that are good teams with cap space, that's going to create a very, very interesting offseason.
Yeah, I know that people anticipating Philly being very active. We'll see. Is there going to be blockbuster trades, big names moving? That all starts soon, but the NBA Finals must finish first. Before we get out, Jerry West passed away today. I know you're a big hoop head there, Keith, and an all-time great. I went to West Virginia, so you can't even imagine the immense enormity of his presence on that campus and what he means to that state for basketball. So people don't even realize as a college player and the impact he had at the college game. But at the pro game, obviously left just an immense mark on the game, becoming the logo. But as a player, executive, everything he did, he seemed to excel in.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a guy who, if we go back to those days at West Virginia, he was the most outstanding player in the Final Four, a Final Four that his team didn't win. And that was also something that carried into the NBA, that he was the finals MVP in a series that his team lost. And those just kind of, I know those sound like almost backhanded compliments, but those are huge because that doesn't happen. You have to be so great to win those awards if your team doesn't win. And then he did get a title as a player. He had 8 championships as an NBA executive, 6 with the Lakers, 2 with the Warriors. He helped the Memphis Grizzlies go from just another franchise to one that's had a lot of success and been a pretty good team over the years. It's a massive, massive loss for a guy who, we're going to be reminded of him every single time we look at the NBA because he's the logo, right? That's going to be something every time we see. It's going to kind of hit you a little harder now that, man, that was Jerry West and he's gone. But it's, the compliments that are out there, the stories out there. I love some of the things about people talking about him, even in the last weeks of his life. He was like, all right, here's what I think about free agency. Here's what I think about these players that I've watched, those kind of things. He was committed and competitive all the way to the end. And sometimes that's, the best thing you can say about a person there. And all these stories that are coming out, they mean so much because of how much he's meant to so many people.
It seemed very sudden when I saw it this morning. I was almost shocked to see what I almost had to make sure I wasn't getting like the Buster Olney fake hack treatment over there. Like, wait, what happened here? But Jerry West passed away this morning, and of course the logo, 86 years old, Lakers, Clippers. People forget his time in Memphis, the impact he had on their organization as well. So executive, player, coach, by the way, and a 3-time Hall of Fame member as well. Jerry West passed away today at 86 years old. All right, Keith Smith, everybody. Celtics getting this done. Is this a sweeperoni, or you think this is a series?
I picked Celtics in 5 before the series. I was that confident in this Celtics team as I have been all year. I felt, we talked about them being different. There's a chance they sweep. If they win tonight, I think they will sweep, because generally what I think happens when we get to a spot is when a team's up 3-0, the other team looks at it and says, we're getting on a flight either way. Maybe a flight to a nice beach is better than a flight back to Boston to maybe get beaten 5. So I think, tonight's a big one, though. Let's see if Boston gets it done. I think the series is over in 4. If not, I think they'll bounce back, win in 4, and then finish it out in 5. But it's they've got work to do for sure. It's not over yet.
Keith Smith, always great to talk basketball. We got a couple games left. I know this is the time of the year where you only got 1 or so games left, but should be a fun offseason. We'll talk to Keith then as well. Draft coming up, and you can listen to that right here on 97.3 ESPN. Keith Smith, thanks, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.